Hi there, this is Phil with Phil Effects. Got another tutorial here. This is for our Art 185 class, beginning Maya. And what we're going to do today is just create your first project. So there's a file that I want you to start with, and it'll have a basic setup. We're going to add some shapes to that, put some colors on those shapes, and then just do a quick render. But this should walk you through how to set up project folders within Maya, work a little bit with shapes, and do a quick render. So let's go ahead and get started. So the file I want you to start with, if we go to the Google Drive, you'll see Phoenix College, go to the General tab, go to Maya, and there's a file here called Lambert Start. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this to my desktop. So go ahead and you want to copy that. And then let's go ahead and we'll open up Maya. And with Maya open, when you set up projects in Maya, the way you do this is, first off, Maya wants to create, and it prefers that you have a folder with a number of subfolders set up to it. And the way you do that is, let's tear off this menu here, and we can look down here, and we go right down to here. And so there's a project window. That's for creating a new project. There's set project. That's so you can tell Maya that you have an existing project and you want to use that. Or you can just go straight to some files, and you can open a recent file for an MA file, or you can open up a recent project. The recent project is the same as setting project. It just goes to ones that you recently used. This actually is quite fast. If you work on one project and the next day you work on the same thing. So it remembers the history of the project that you set up. So we want to create a new project, so let's go to project window. So we click on that. And right now, when you look in here, the name is just called default, and the location, it goes to a default location, which is, in my case, users, PHOPUS, documents, Maya, and project. So what I want to do is I want to create a folder. In this case, I'm going to put it on my desktop. And so we say new. We go over here and click new. And when I click new, notice this folder here now became, it was grayed out before, but now I can actually click on it. So if I click on this, I can give a path to where I want that project to be. So let's go ahead and put this on the desktop. And I have created a folder already called My First Maya Project. So let me just click on that and say select. And so now you see it's on users, PHOPUS, desktop, My First Maya Project. And the project has to have a name. So let's go ahead and give that a name and call this week 2. All right. Now when I click accept, Maya is going to create all of these subfolders within this Maya First Project. Let's go ahead and accept that. We say accept. And now let's go ahead and open up My First Maya Project. Note what it did there. It created a folder called week 2. All right, and under week 2 there's a number of subfolders. So we have assets, autosave, cache, data clip, images, so on and so forth. So Maya created this main top level project called week 2, and then all of these subfolders for us. On my desktop, here's that Lambert Start file. Remember I said we downloaded that? This is a scene file. So what you want to do is you want to take this, and let me open up a separate window, and we will want to drag this into the scene folder here. So here's scenes, okay? And here's this Lambert scene. So I take this, I want to drag this, and I want to put that right there. And I actually have this other file called Raygun. I'm going to go ahead and give that to you guys. So I'm going to take this scene, and I'm going to drag that to there also. And I can go there to week 2, because this is on a Mac, and we can go to scenes, and I can put it right there. So now I've got 2 scene files, Raygun and Lambert Start, and I have a project folder called My First Project Week 2, and everything's set up the way we want to. So now let's go ahead and we'll open up that scene. Because we created a project, now I can click on this folder and it goes directly to my project scenes folder. See this? It goes to users, PHOPUS desktop, Maya first project, week 2 scenes. This is why it's nice you want to set it up that way. So let's click on Lambert Start and let's just open that up. And it's going to have the current scene is not saved. Do I want to save that? No, I don't. So let's just click on that. And here's this scene. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what I've created in this scene. So if I zoom out, what you see here is I've got this 3D object. This is called a torus knot. This actually is a very nice kind of a test object because it has surfaces, and there's some surfaces in the foreground and surfaces in the background, and it makes kind of a nice object to render and use as a test object. The other thing I have is I have this backdrop. This backdrop, if we look at it from the side, has a floor, and then it has a curved back, and then it has a wall in the back. This actually is very much like a photographer's studio. If you've ever been inside a photographer's studio, in particular where they're not maybe necessarily doing portraits, but they're taking pictures of objects like for product photography, this is a very common technique where you use this curved background, because what it does is it makes everything look infinite. You don't get a seam there, you don't get a crease at the wall, and by having this curve, it ends up just making a nice smooth background. The other two things you'll notice in this scene is we have a couple of lights. So I have a light here, and I have a light here. And these lights are lighting my object, which is the torus knot. So if we zoom in here, we can take a look and we can see what this scene looks like. If I change my settings to the new Viewport 2.0, this actually looks a lot closer to what the scene will actually look like when it's rendered. All right? So here's our object. And we want to go ahead, go ahead and do a real quick render on this. The way you want to do a render is you go up right to these 4 little icons up here, and if you click this furthest one that has these 2 little X's over here, this is the setup that you do for render setup. So let's go ahead and click on that. And at the moment, what I'm going to do is we have this set up, and the render engine we're going to use is Mental Ray. And we don't need to worry about color management. The file output, I don't need to do that either, because I'm just going to render essentially to the screen. We're not going to render any kind of an animation. The camera is going to be the perspective camera. So this is renderable cameras, so we set it up for the render camera. And the size of the image we're going to render is just a very simple size, 640 by 480. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. And now if I click on this icon, this opens up the render window. And if we go over here and say render view, lo and behold, a little bit of calculation, and there's our render. And so you can see the nice soft shadows that are created from the object, from the lighting that I have. And the detail is not that high. I let this render out as fairly low resolution render. But this is why this does make a nice kind of an object, because you can see some shadowing, you can see some detail, and for a test object for testing your lighting, this ends up working out pretty good. So let's go ahead and add a couple more objects to our scene. So I'm going to zoom back with my camera. Remember, the way you zoom back is Alt and the left mouse button and drag. Let's go over those again. So that the zooming, panning is the middle mouse button. I can drag around my window. And orbiting is the right mouse button, or left mouse button. So this is left mouse button, right mouse button, and middle mouse button. And what we want to add here is, let's just go ahead and add a sphere. So if we go and check what I have for my settings. Now the way I have settings for creating polygons, at the moment I have it set to interactively create. So what does that mean? Well, let's go ahead and we'll do that. We'll click on sphere, and I get interactively create, was not enabled. So what it does is it just creates a default sphere for me. So let's take that sphere and let's move it up a little bit and move it over and put that into our scene. Now let's go up to the Create, Polygon Primitives, and enable interactive creation. So I click on that. Let's check and make sure that that's set. Yep, okay, so that's now set for interactive creation. And let's click on Sphere again. And now Maya is telling me drag on the grid. So I drag on the grid, and now I can adjust what size of a sphere I want. So hit the W key for translate. Let's move that over and move that this place. Okay? And let's put a couple more objects in here. Let's go over here and let's create a cone. Again, I'm in interactive mode. So I'm going to drag to make the size of the base and then drag to make the height of the cone. And let's take this guy and we'll push him into the background a little bit. And let's do a cube. So we'll click on Polygon Cube. I drag, and then I drag up, and there's my Polygon Cube. So we'll put him in the foreground. All right, so here's my scene. We've got some objects there. We've got a couple of spheres. We've got my torus knot. We've got a cube and a cone. And next thing we'd like to do is let's put some colors on there. Well, the way you put colors is you use materials. All right, so I'm not going to get too much into the Hypershade. That's the tool that you use to add materials. But let's do some basic materials here. So if you come down here and you click, this is the first tool panel set up. So we have panel layout. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. And that will be perspective view with a Hypershade. So here's our Hypershade. And when this opens up, you've got a number of windows here. This looks a little complicated, but just take this one and drag it down to the bottom for right now. We don't need that. And drag this over. And what I want to get to is just click on up here where it says Maya. All right? And these are the basic shaders. Shaders are what you use to add color and texture to objects. So what I want to do is we're going to use what's called a blend shader. So let's click on that. So we have this blend shader. And now go over here and you have attribute editor and channel box. If you don't have that, you want to, if you click on this second icon over from the right, or the third one from the right, or second one from the left, notice how these tabs change to be channel box attribute editor. If I click on it again, that goes away. This is the channel box. What we want is the attribute editor. So let's click on that. Here's the attribute editor. Here's our blend shader. And what we want to do is let's put some color on that. So we go over here, and here's our blend shader, and you just click on color, and it brings up a color wheel. So let's go ahead and make that red. And let's call this red underscore blend. All right. Now what we'd like to do is apply that red to some of our objects. So I can click on this in the perspective window, and there's a number of ways we can add this to there. Okay, one way is with this selected, and notice it's at the moment it wants to do a translate to it because that's the last command I did. If I hit the Q key, that translation goes away. So if we right click on this and we go down and we say add an existing material, this is just about going off, but here we have red blend. So I'm right clicking, go down to add existing material, red blend. Now you can see that that's red. All right. Another way to do this is I can go over to this window on top of the red blend, and if I click on the middle mouse button and drag, I can drag it right over, and I put red onto that sphere. So this is our red color. So let's get some more colors in here. So what I'm going to do is click on blend again. All right. Now let's get some green in here. So let's click there. We have some green. Let's name this green_blend, hit return, and let's make the cone a green blend. So I can go here and I can drag like I did before, or I can right click, but there's actually another way. Another way I can do this is I can select the cone. So now the cone is selected, and over in this window, which is the work area, if I right click, I can assign the material to the selection. So let's go ahead and do it that way. So I assign the material to the selection. Now notice that the cone is green. Okay, so we've got 2 red spheres, a green cone. This is okay. This area here is getting a little congested. I've got these other colors in here. A few things about the work area. What I can do is I can use the Alt and right click, and I can scale this just like I scale the camera in here. These are made so they work the same. So I can get a little more room that way. The other way really is I just go up here to the eraser, and if I click erase, it clears this area. Note it didn't delete those colors. Okay, this is just a temporary, this is like a scratch pad. So I cleared the work area, but my green is here and my red is here. All right, so let's get another blend. All right, and change the color. And let's make this color a little bit different. So let's go over here. I can take this color wheel rather than just pick a standard color. All right. And what I want is, let's go over here. We'll make this kind of purple. Make the intensity. See how that's changing? And this is using HSV, which is hue, saturation, and value. When you work in Maya, you almost always want to use hue, saturation, and value. You have the ability to work in RGB, and you can work in fractional RGB values or integer RGB values. I sometimes work on this if I'm trying to match a color that a particular color that's on the web, because the web-based things all use RGB and they use values to 255, or they use a fractional number to specify that. But as soon as I do that, just so I can capture it, I actually switch to HSV. And this is because you can vary the intensity in Maya here on this value. You can actually go in and you can get values that are greater than 1. You use that in things that we'll talk about later, but you can't do that when you're working with RGB. When you're working with hue, saturation, and value, you can. So let's just go ahead and make this purple. That looks good. And we'll click this torus knot, and we'll assign the material to the selection. So now my torus knot is purple. And then let's get a last blend in here. And let's pick a color that's maybe orange. So I go in here, get that intensity up. And actually I want it a little more orange that way. It's really not giving me the color I want. Let's see here. There we go. That's looking a little more orange. There we go. Close to red now. Yeah, that's looking good. All right, so we'll click on the box. I'll middle mouse click, drag it over, drop it on it. So now we have some multiple colors, some reds, purples, and orange. So let's go back to our perspective view. And now I'm just lining up my shot as to how I'd like to see this render out. This looks pretty good. And I can tell how the camera is going to look because I can go over here, and right here, if we look at the resolution gate, all right, that shows me, here's my 640 by 480 window, all right? So if I do a render, this is how those objects are going to be centered. If I zoom it up, okay, that's how it's going to be centered. Let's do a couple so you can see that. So here's my one shot. This is the render view tool, and there's a couple of things here that are actually quite handy. So I did this one render already. If we go up here and click this green box, that'll save my render. Notice I now have a slide bar here, okay? And at the moment, the two are the same. So this was my first render that I just saved, and now this is my essentially my render queue. Let's go ahead and click on this. We'll do a render, and there's my render. Notice we got some reflections in here. See, the sphere is reflecting this object, and there's reflections. You can see each one of these objects is reflecting the other one. All right. So if I click over here and I scale things down, change my viewpoint. All right. So now I have changed my view on how the camera is going to render that view. Let's go back to here. Let's save that render. Hit render again. Now you got a different perspective. And because I saved the previous one by clicking this box, I can do a compare. This is where this comes in really handy, because you'll find when you're rendering your projects, you'll change one parameter and you want to see what it looks like. And if you can have a previous and a current one, being able to click back and forth ends up being really nice, so you can see what the first one was and what's the second one. That's really it. This is really what we need to do for the first project. I hope this has been helpful, and go ahead and download those files, try it out, and be sure and let me know if you have any problems, and I'll see you on the next class. Thanks again. Bye.